Good morning and welcome to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I am located at 1563 Main Street in Peckville, Pennsylvania, and I am here on this station every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. to bring you, the Pennsylvania landowner, the valuable information that you need regarding natural gas development here in Pennsylvania. Well, we have officially hit our sixth year anniversary of doing All Things Marcellus. I started doing the show in August of 2010, and we've now hit our sixth year anniversary. Very excited about it. When I did my first show, I'd never done any radio shows or anything like that before. And so I literally had every single word written out that I read as I did the radio show. We've come a long way since then. I now have just some papers here in front of me, and we do a little bit of ranting, but a lot more off the cuff, certainly a lot more comfortable. So hopefully it comes through and you're enjoying the show. But we're really excited. I'm personally very excited. I never dreamt when we started this that we would be doing 1 year, yet alone hitting our sixth year of All Things Marcellus, and this is a great time to remind you. Look, go to pagasleaseattorney.com. Go to pipelineattorney.com. On the websites, we have prior radio shows that are archived. So if you're new to the show, or even if you just started listening in the last 6 months, check out pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. We have the radio shows up and indexed. Now, not all 6 years, but we do have, I think maybe one, or at least one, I think maybe 2 years of radio shows up and available. So you can search by topic also. So if you wanted to hear a pipeline show, and I'm going to talk pipelines today, you want to hear gas lease, buying, selling gas rights, real estate transactions, estate planning shows, go to pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. While you're there, cruise around, read the articles, read the blogs, read the information. There's a lot of very good, I'm a bit biased, but I do believe there's not only just good, I think there's outstanding information for you, the landowner. So whether you're looking for information, whether you're looking for representation, check out pagasleaseattorney.com. Check out pipelineattorney.com. Use the websites as a resource. Use them as a resource. And also, I want to just remind everybody, I get calls from Western Pennsylvania, from Tioga County, literally multiple calls a week from landowners who hadn't contacted the office, new clients, reviews, consultations. Please, again, do not worry about distance. I have clients all over the state of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I've had clients all over the country and even in other countries. So, and even if you're older, I've just finished representation in the last year. I think my client was 88 years old from Western Pennsylvania. So don't worry about distance. And I assure you, if I ever think that distance is a problem, I'll tell you immediately. My goal is to help you, not to give you a legal bill and not be helped. My goal is to help everybody. So if I don't think I can help you, I promise I will let you know. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't anybody? If I don't think I can help you, then I'll let you know. Or if I think distance is a problem, I will let you know. My goal is to help you. And we're very happy. If you go to the websites, we're very proud too of the testimonials where you can read. I think we have 100 plus testimonials up on the website from landowners that we're very proud that we represented, that I work for, and that we helped. So again, do not worry about distance. You can give us a call, 570-307-0702. That's 570-307-0702. Now remember, I love to remind everybody, for all you listening, I, Doug Clark, of the Clark Law Firm, have not, will not, do not represent gas or oil companies. I represent Pennsylvania landowners for gas leases, gas lease amendments and modifications, pipeline agreements, royalty issues, unitization issues, potential actions or claims against gas or pipeline companies for breach of contract of your agreements, represent landowners buying and selling gas rights. Now, you hear me talking about that. That's a tricky area, and the reason why I primarily represent landowners who are selling gas rights, because you need to be protected. I promise you, you need to be protected. People are being taken advantage of tremendously. People who are selling their gas rights are being taken advantage of. You can't let that happen. I'm not going to do this show on this. I talked some about last week, but I can tell you this. Commercial alert, if you are considering selling your gas rights, call my office, do a review and consultation. I am very, very confident that it is going to be extremely helpful for you. I can't recommend enough. If you're seriously considering selling your gas rights, we should talk. We definitely should talk. You can call the office, 570-307-0702. Take an hour or two. We should talk. You will understand so much more after the conversation. You will be so informed, and you will make the right decision. And that may be, hey, I'm going to go ahead and sell my gas rights. But we should talk. So, okay, just to finish up here. So I represent people for meter sites, surface use agreements, compressor sites, really any and all representation related to oil and gas issues, oil and gas development, anything at all related to oil and gas representation. And of course, from the landowner side, from the oil and gas right owner side, have not, will not, do not represent oil and gas companies. Again, you're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm, and we're going to jump into it. And I'm going to tell you this, or finally, I guess you may say, but once again, I'm excited. If you listen to the show, you know that one of my, it sounds bizarre, I have a lot of other great outside interests, but in work, I love pipeline agreements. I can't believe I'm saying it. I love pipeline agreements. They are probably my favorite thing to work on. It's something I do all the time. I have reviewed, consulted with, negotiated pipeline agreements with over 60 different companies in Pennsylvania. 60 different companies reviewed, consulted with, or negotiated. 60 different companies for pipeline right-of-way agreements. My point is, boy, that gives us some perspective as to what's been going on and what's going on out here in Pennsylvania. So what does that mean? It means there is a lot of information and experience that we can learn from whenever you're considering entering into an agreement now. So not to say, oh, this guy's the greatest, oh, this guy's so smart, this guy's amazing. No, there is an incredible amount of experience. I have I like to think, a certain intelligence level, which I use when I'm considering my experience in a new offer to most effectively represent that individual landowner client. And because of all of this experience in negotiating with all of these different companies, negotiating money, negotiating language, negotiating location issues, reclamation issues, whatever it may be, we learn from those experiences. So I caution you, I really, really caution you, because I see it all the time. I caution you, just because your neighbor entered into a pipeline right-of-way agreement and negotiated and read and did research online doesn't mean that that should be your resource. Or just because you did a pipeline agreement in the past doesn't mean that, okay, now you're an expert, that you know everything you need to know to maximize this next agreement. You got to be careful about that. You have to, I'm telling you. Another thing, I may have, and this happens every once in a while, where we do a pipeline right-of-way agreement. I represent somebody, say 2011, 12, 13. Now they come back 2016, and they have a new offer. They have a new pipeline offer. So they say, hey, Doug, got this new offer. Do we need to do anything? Can we just use the same deal, use the same agreement, just switch maps or something like that? Well, generally, first the answer is, well, let's look at it. But in many, many cases, the answer is no. No. Just because we did the best possible agreement in 2012, 13, doesn't mean that's the best possible agreement in 2016. I say this all the time. You got to understand and properly evaluate your leverage. Every case can be different. On your same property, your leverage last year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago, but even last year, in fact, even 6 months ago, that your leverage today can be considerably different. And in fact, normally, if you agreed to a pipeline agreement in the past and now there's a new one coming along in the future, in most cases, your leverage is going to be greater. You're going to have stronger, more powerful leverage now than you did back then for a lot of different reasons. So you can't just say, oh, well, I did the agreement before, let's switch it in. Yeah, I got good money then. The market may have changed. Or you may have the ability to negotiate now because you have a lot more leverage. So what do? Well, we maximize the leverage. At least you understand the leverage, and then you say, okay, how aggressive do I want to be? Some people are very aggressive. Some people, I don't want to be so aggressive. We have to have those discussions. Assess, what is your risk tolerance? How much are you afraid? Do you really want to have this agreement? Then the question is, okay, well, why? Let's talk about that. I talk to so many people that come in thinking one thing, but after they get all the information that they need from their side, because they're thinking a certain way. Why is that the case? Because they've only listened to the landman, the pipeline company landman. And in case any of our listeners have forgotten, what's the problem with that? What is the problem with listening to the gas or pipeline company landman? I hope people are thinking in their mind, well, I know what he's going to say next. Well, I'm going to say it. They, the gas and pipeline company landman, work for the gas and pipeline company, not you, the land owner. So if you're going to listen to your adversary in this negotiation process, and it doesn't mean adversary who's evil and mean and threatening, so maybe sometimes, but it means that there's a person, there's a company on the other side, a company with a lot of money, with a lot of lawyers, with the ability to hire a lot of lawyers who've done this all over the country where there's gas. And they say, okay, we want to get the best possible agreement for us. Of course they do. We know that. We respect that and understand that. You as the landowner want to get the best possible agreement for you. Whether pipeline, gas lease, surface use, compressor site, meter site, whatever it may be. So why would you ever rely on the person, the lead person negotiating, to the ability that they have authority to negotiate an agreement for your adversary, for the other side? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. You cannot rely on the gas and pipeline company landmen to educate you on your rights. You can't do it. Well, you can, but you're making an enormous mistake. You need to get somebody who's informed, who has experience and understands these issues and can represent your interests, not the company's interests. Ask them for their card, their business card. Does it have your name on it or the company's name? You have to make sure that you're getting the information that you need from your perspective to make the right decision for you. Okay, I'm getting fired up, so I'm gonna take a break here. We're gonna jump into some pipeline stuff, and it's I always say, hey, this isn't just pipelines. This covers all kinds of the same principles apply, but we're gonna really dive into a pipeline right-of-way agreement. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm, right here on this station every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m., and I'm gonna be right back after this super important message. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Remember, you can join me right here on this station every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. You can always contact the office, 570-307-0702. Okay, let's jump into it here. So, all right, I'm going to talk about a pipeline right-of-way agreement. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go through this agreement. I'm holding it here in my hand. Hopefully you can hear that. I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to highlight some terms, talk about some things, and explain some problems. Now, this just happens to be, ears pay attention here, a pipeline right-of-way agreement that has recently been offered in Tioga County. Guess where? Tioga County. Again, I have more active clients right now in Tioga than anywhere, and I get typically multiple calls from Tioga County every week. So it's a very, very hot area, but I don't care if you're in Tioga, if you're Bradford, if you're Sullivan, Lycoming, Washington, Greene, Allegheny, Armstrong, Westmoreland. I don't care where you are, Bradford, Susquehanna. These issues still apply to you. And I don't care even if we're not talking pipelines, you're talking gas leases. A lot of these same issues overlap, no matter what the type of agreement is. But for now, we're going to talk about this Tioga County offer for a pipeline right-of-way agreement, and it happens to be by a company called SWEPI LP. SWEPI LP. So I'm sure that's, hopefully that's going to get some interest out there. So the agreement goes, identifies the people, identifies the property, then goes on to state, we get into what's called a grant, meaning you as a landowner, you're granting certain rights. What rights are you granting? That is the meat of the agreement. What rights are you granting? Here's a hint, guys. What you want to grant is the smallest amount of rights that there is. You want to minimize the grant that you are giving the company. What does the company want to do? They want to do anything in the world that they want. What do you want to do? You want to limit them. So if you're signing a pipeline right-of-way agreement, your basic premise should be that if you're going to do this, you're going to grant the company the right to run one single natural gas pipeline in the right-of-way. That's your starting point. Now, you may move from that point, and in a lot of cases you will, but that is your starting point. A lot of cases, good negotiation, good leverage, that's exactly what you get. And you may be able to say the size of the pipeline that can be installed, but we're starting off with one pipeline only, and we want that thing buried, of course, and generally 48 inches. We want minimum 48 inches. And this is a good time to remind everybody, look, this is not specific advice for anyone, but I'll tell you, I think it's darn good general advice, but not specific legal advice for anyone. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. So, granting clause, the heart and soul of any agreement. Now, I say that doesn't mean that there aren't other super critical provisions in the right-of-way agreement, but the grant. What rights are you giving the gas or pipeline company is crucial. And time and time again, landowners think they only granted the company the right to put in a pipeline when in fact they granted considerably more rights. And it is fundamental, but worth repeating over and over again, that you as a landowner have to understand that the pipeline company landman who tells you, hey, the company wants to put in one natural gas pipeline, that doesn't mean that's what you are agreeing to. What you're agreeing to is what is ultimately on the white sheet of paper, the black print on the white paper that you actually sign. And if that only says one pipeline, then that's what they're allowed to do. But if you didn't negotiate this and know what you're doing, you're probably going to be granting, and I say probably, almost definitely granting far more rights in most cases than you ever even imagined. So we got to make sure that we are minimizing the grant. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's dive into it. So here it says that you are granting the company, I'm going to paraphrase some and quote some, but granting the company right-of-way and or easement for the purposes of constructing, installing, maintaining, and operating pipe lines. Lines, plural, S there. 4, collecting, gathering, transporting of gases, liquids, water, solids, got that? Solids, or mixtures thereof, along with rights hereinafter described. Okay, mouthful there. But a couple quick points. Multiple pipelines that can transport virtually anything in the world within the pipeline. But, hey, look, we're only at the beginning. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. So, okay, let's go on. So what other rights are you granting here? Number 1, the right to lay, construct, install, operate, maintain, repair, replace, abandon, renew, substitute. Here's some good ones. Change the size of and remove a pipeline, and associated appurtenances. You better dang well know what in the world is an appurtenance. Well, here it says, including but not limited to. That's our lawyer talk. Including but not limited to communication cables. Communication cables with an S. Do you know what that is? Okay, electric lines buried in the pipeline ditch with necessary manholes and splice points at or above ground level. Because remember, we start off saying one pipeline buried 48 inches. That's where we're coming from. Now we're looking at manholes and splice points at or above ground level. Whether or not the same may be incidental or necessary. Are you listening? Please, I'm going to repeat this. Whether or not same may be incidental or necessary to or for such operations. So they don't have to be necessary for these operations. Remember, we're talking about one pipeline is where we're starting from. Now we're talking about above ground splice points and all these other things, whether they're necessary or incidental, whether they may be incidental or necessary to or for such operations. Next words, air patrol markers. Do you know what those are? Risers, pig markers, valves, and corrosion equipment. So remember, we started with the pipeline. I'm going to do this quickly. I'm going to say this again real quick because this is amazing. So change the size, remove a pipeline and associate appurtenances, including but not limited to communication cables, electric lines buried in the pipeline ditch with necessary manholes and splice points at or above ground level. Above ground. That's not buried. That means you're looking at it. Whether or not same may be incidental or necessary to or for such operations. Air patrol markers, risers, pig markers, valves, and corrosion equipment. Now, new stuff here. So we got to be done, right? No. Pay attention, please. And I mean it respectfully. Along with the right to fence off same for the purposes of transporting liquids, gases, solids, or mixtures thereof, whether originating in, on, or under these foreign lands, meaning other people's property, and said pipe lines, that's a plural, and appurtenances, again, plural, to be located on the land of the grantor, which is shown on the map. So they show you your land on a map. That's critical. Yeah, I know where my land is. Where in the heck is this pipeline going to be? And I'll tell you, you better darn well have a map with the pipeline location if you're ever going to sign an agreement. I don't believe we've ever had an agreement ever signed that did not show where the pipeline was to be installed with an exhibit map. Also, another quick point. I can't possibly remember. Well, I can't remember because I don't think it ever happened. I don't believe we've ever signed an agreement that did not define the maximum number of pipelines. Don't think we've ever had that occur. And as in this offer, as in almost all offers I ever see, there's an unlimited number of pipelines that can be installed under this agreement. Don't forget, guys, we start our position. Yes, you want to run a natural gas pipeline. That's why you knocked on my door. I probably have a lease. I'd like to see my gas go to market. So now don't go too far on that because we need a fair deal. But I'll tell you this, I didn't plan on signing off for all these electrical communication cables and all these other items. I want a gas pipeline is what I was thinking I was agreeing to. So you better start carving out substantial limitations of these rights. Or if you're going to agree to them, you better darn well know what you are agreeing to. And as you just heard, you're sure if you sign this, you're agreeing to a whole lot. A whole lot. Okay, this is a good time to take a break. You've been listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. You can contact me, 570-307-0702, 570-307-0702, and you can join me every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. on this station, and I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Remember, right here on this station, you can join me every week. We hit our 6th year anniversary, and you can join me right here, 8 to 9 a.m. every Sunday. And if you missed any of today's show or any of the prior shows, you can go back to pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. We will have today's show up and available Monday morning. So make sure you check out the shows. If you can't join us each week, check out pagasleaseattorney.com, check out pipelineattorney.com. We'll have the week's new show up and available every week, every Monday morning. Okay, let's jump back into it and have some fun here. We're talking about pipeline right-of-way agreement offer. In particular, I'm talking about a specific offer by a company called Sweppy LP in Tioga County. But if you're not from Tioga County, don't worry. The same type of principle can apply anywhere. If you're from Tioga County, turn up the volume, and remember, you can go back on Monday and listen to today's show because this is really important to you if you get these offers. So even if you don't have it now, if you get it next year, remember this show. Remember this show. So, okay, we're starting with the premise. And again, I've done these agreements, negotiated, consulted with, worked on agreements, pipeline agreements with over 60 different companies in Pennsylvania. I say that so you understand, if you're just stumbling across the show here, who's this guy? What's he talking about? That's the experience that we're talking about. That's where this is coming from. So, okay, I said earlier, we're going to start with the premise as a landowner that we're going to grant, if we're going to, a pipeline right-of-way agreement, an easement. And so if we're going to do it, we want it limited to one natural gas pipeline, and we'd like it buried 48 inches as a minimum. That's going to be our starting point. Now, we may negotiate from there. Many times we do, but that's going to be the starting point. That's where we want to start. Where does the company want to start? Well, we were reading the granting clause there in that last segment. I'm going to continue, but they want to be able to do anything. They want no limitations. We want limitations. They want no limitations. Again, when you have that situation, should you be relying on the other side? The company landman who wants complete openness, who wants the ability, her client wants to be able to do anything. Is that the person you're going to rely on to educate and inform you of your rights? Think about that. They don't work for you. They work for the company. Okay, thanks. I just got to say it. I got to say it often. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm, and here we go. Talking about the granting clause. So I'm going to the next paragraph. So I've already talked a lot about this. This is still rights you're giving. Next paragraph. The right at any time or times to lay, construct, install, operate, inspect, maintain, repair, replace, renew, substitute, change the size of, and remove additional pipelines and appurtenances. So again, plural, additional pipelines, appurtenances. And finish that up, says on the land. I don't see any limitations here, guys. I don't see any limitations. Well, where the heck are they? Goes on. Each additional line, not just saying a second line, each additional line shall be laid subject to the same rights and conditions as apply to the first line. Guys, you gotta be careful. You have to be careful. What if you put 4 lines in and they do it in 4 different times? Your property gets ripped up on 4 different occasions. How are you going to be compensated? It says laid under the same rights. It doesn't say subject or said under subject to the same rights. It doesn't say about the compensation here. It just says the same rights. These things have to be meticulously negotiated, but meticulously documented. I get the calls time and time again from landowners across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Well, they told me they were going to do this, but now something else is happening. Well, we look at the agreement and it's allowed. And I could say, yeah, well, I can contact the company for you, but I've done this before. And the company's going to say, hey, it's in the agreement. And you said, well, the landman told me they wouldn't do that. Well, they say, hey, look, what's in the agreement is what matters. And most of these documents have what I call the landman free pass, which that's my term, landman free pass, that they can say anything because the verbal representations or statements are not part of the agreement. So a lot of these documents have that type of language. So, okay. Now, let me just say, so I don't get these letters from landmen, I'm not saying landmen can commit fraud and all this other stuff. I'm talking about reasonable statements. Oh, yeah, we're only going to put 1 pipeline. We're only going to do this or that. Well, yeah, maybe that's the intention, but intentions change. Maybe that was never the intention. Maybe the landman didn't know that was the intention, but the company intended it. But the point is, if it's not in the agreement in writing, it generally doesn't matter. So we got to get it in writing, guys. We have to get it in writing. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. So, okay. You say, all right, well, you just read 3 paragraphs there, pretty long. You done yet? No, I'm not, unfortunately. Let's go to the next paragraph, number 3. The right of ingress and egress, meaning to and from, in, on, over, across, and through the land. The land means your property. So now you've given them the right of ingress and the egress. So the right to travel in, on, over, across, and through your property without limitation. But wait a second, does it get worse? No, it can't get worse. Well, let's read some more. So the right of ingress, egress, on, over, across, and through the land, your property, and adjoining lands owned by you, the landowner or grantor, for any and all purposes necessary and convenient to the exercise of the rights of way and easement. And listen to this too. Pay attention to this. The rights, listen to this very closely. Rights of way, plural, rights of way, and easements with an S, easements herein granted. So it's saying that you are not just granting a single right of way, a single easement from this defined area. It says right here, I'm going to repeat it, that for any and all other purposes necessary and convenient to the exercise of the rights of way. That's how you pluralize right of way. Multiple right of way isn't right of ways. It's actually called rights of way. And then finally, and easements with an S, herein granted. So you're granting multiple rights of way and multiple easements. I would bet quite a bit that most people have no idea that. You have to, I use that word meticulously, you have to meticulously review these documents and understand the rights. So again, we are so far beyond our starting point of one natural gas pipeline to be buried 48 inches below the surface. We are so far away from that. And in my opinion, if you sign a document like this, and we're not done, It's an unbelievable mistake. And what's amazing, and I haven't even got to this, but I'm going to jump in it now. Well, maybe you're going to sign this because they're going to give you $1 million. Maybe you're going to sign this because they're going to give you $200 a foot. Maybe you're going to sign this because it's going to turn your life around. That, hey, yeah, I don't like it, but hey, it's going to turn my life around. I'm going to get a massive amount of money. Or maybe you're going to sign this and you're offered $5 per linear foot for pipeline installed. $5? Maybe you're offered 10 for the easement per foot. $5? I have never, and I'm going to vow not to, represent a client who's going to sign a right-of-way agreement for $5 per foot. $5. I'm finishing one now. It's around $130 a foot. And this, we're talking about $5? Now, every case is different. But the standard rate in Susquehanna County now is typically around $30 per foot, around there per pipeline. These agreements are really, really bad, guys. My opinion, these agreements are really, really bad. Really bad. Offered by the same company that's sitting out there with vertical wells all over the place. Vertical wells holding property, feeding off of frustrated landowners. Landowners are frustrated, very understandably so, because they were promised future riches. Future riches. Now they haven't seen any future riches. They're not walking around as millionaires. And so now they're frustrated. And here comes this big monster company feeding off your frustration. It's a terrible, terrible phenomenon where landowners will sign a bad agreement, or they have these false expectations, and then later on, when those expectations don't occur, the landowner is now super frustrated. And you would think landowner says, hey, I'm not going to fall for this stuff again. You took advantage of me. I'm frustrated. That's my position. Whether you agree or not, that's my position. So now you come with a pipeline right-of-way agreement that you asked me to give you every single thing under the sun, and then you want to pay me $5 or $10 a foot. $5 or $10 a foot when no one else is paying that low as a regular basis. You don't see that. You want to do that. And I'm sitting here with vertical wells holding my property that you're not going to produce from, and you're probably almost never going to produce from, but you're holding the property to buy yourself time. And now I, as a landowner, am going to sign another agreement to give you more power and more time and hardly pay anything. Why am I going to do that? When am I going to learn from that history lesson? When am I going to look at the fact that people are signing in other counties routinely at $30 per foot or more? Routinely. Everybody stopped signing agreements at $5 and $10 a foot. Here's what happens. They raise to the level where people start signing. So if everybody in Tioga County or any county said, I'm never going to sign another right-of-way agreement below $30 per foot per line, well, you're going to find that the market's going to change, and it's going to typically, you would expect, it's going to go right to that level. And then when people stop signing the $30 and the next group says, hey, we're not going to sign unless it's $50 a foot, what are you going to find? $50 a foot offers. That's the truth, guys. That's the truth. But as long as people keep signing, they keep signing $5 and $10 foot agreements, you're going to keep throwing them out there. Of course. Why wouldn't they? We got to stop signing bad agreements. We have to stop signing bad agreements. We have to stop making decisions based upon our frustration that was actually created by the other side. We have to be smarter. Not specific advice, not telling everyone don't sign, whatever. Specific advice, be smarter. Specific advice, stop signing bad agreements. Specific advice, get specific advice. Okay, you're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. You can join me every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. on this station. You can contact the office, 570-307-0702, 570-307-0702. Visit the websites. Check out the shows. We archive them on the websites, pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. I'll be right back. One more segment to go. I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I'm going to jump right into it here because I want to get through this agreement. And there's not much left, so it shouldn't take that long. So, okay, going to speed up a little bit. Next section deals with the reservation of rights, so which is good. What are you as a landowner reserving? What rights are you keeping? Well, it says that you reserve the right to use the land, meaning your property, except in a way that may unreasonably interfere with the company's rights that you're granting them. So you cannot have structures, plant trees, drill, or excavate within the right-of-way. So that's a limitation on you. All right, so next, permanent right-of-way area shall be 50 feet wide, meaning, guys, that as many lines as they can fit within a 50-foot area, they have the right to do, as well as cables and all those other things we talked about earlier. Goes on. They shall have the right, SWEPI shall have the right to use a temporary workspace of an additional 50 feet. 50 feet permanent, that's theirs forever, or unless you change it, but there's no restrictions here. 50 feet permanent, and they can clear. So if you have another 50 feet of trees going through a wooded area, they can clear that out as well as their workspace area. Then it goes on that they can also have additional workspace areas adjacent to roads, railroads, levees, ravines, waterways, mountainous terrain, as needed during the exercise of the rights. So as needed. Too, remember, $5 a foot for pipeline laid. They can clear 100 feet wide. They can clear more than 100 feet wide if they need it in these certain construction areas. So you could have all kinds of space taken and trees and things like that cleared. You would be paid for the trees. They you're talking about, you may think, oh, a 50-foot pipeline. No, you can be giving much more than that. And also remember that they can put as many pipelines as they can under this agreement within the 50-foot permanent easement area, and they can come back an unlimited number of times to change, add lines, change the size of lines, remove the lines, above ground facilities, appurtenances, all of these different things. Once again, please be careful. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. We're going through a SWEPI LP offer pipeline right-of-way agreement to Tioga County landowner, to a Tioga County landowner. So, okay, next section goes on to state, SWEPI, by acceptance of this agreement, agrees to bury the pipeline or cable at least 36 inches below the top of the surface. Goes on to state that, listen to this. Listen, please, to this. SWEPI shall not be required to bury temporary water pipelines that are laid on the surface of the land, meaning your property, for less than 180 days. Let's stop. Let's look at this a minute. So, okay, we're assuming we're coming into this. We're going with one buried natural gas pipeline, 48 inches in depth. That's where we're looking to grant. We've talked about all the other things that you're granting here, but out of the blue, number 6 at the last sentence, SWEPI shall not be required to bury water lines that are laid on the surface of the land for less than 180 days. 180 days, guys, is 6 months. 6 months. By the way, remember, there's no location map showing where these water lines would be. You've just granted unlimited water lines across the property, and they can be above the ground for up to 6 months at a time. Say your well site is going on or going up, they're constructing it, there's a well site in your area, and they want to take water lines from a certain river or body or water source and run water to that well site. Well, you've given them the right to do that. And you've given them the right to do that, and it looks like they can do it anywhere and as many times as they want. As many times as they want, and they can leave them on the surface of your ground, for up to 6 months at a time. So say they put in a well now, this year, say they do one well per year. You could have that pipeline on your property, the above ground water line, like think big fire hoses on your property for 6 months at a time for year after year after year, or whenever the company wants to do it, anytime. That, ladies and gentlemen, can be a disaster. And I know that because I've represented people who have signed agreements that have allowed surface water lines, and they regret it. Now, look, you may agree to surface water lines, but you sure as heck don't want to agree to things like this, where it's left wide open. Yeah, 6 months at a time, but how many times? How many times can this occur? Maybe there's a pipeline or a well site on one side of your property and then another on another side, and maybe they want to keep using these water lines time and time again. Well, they can run them on the surface of your property. There's no limitations as to how many times this can occur. Imagine you're trying to farm this property and you keep getting these water lines ran all across your property. Or maybe you just want to look out and not see water lines all over the surface of your property, or one line across the surface. Let's not get crazy. But 6 months at a time. Every summer you may have a water line on your property. There's no limitations. Well, we're not going to do that. Well, fine. Let's define this. So that's really, really concerning to me. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Next paragraph. SWEPI shall pay for any damages to crops, fences, buildings, livestock, marketable timber on the land caused by their construction operations. But after the first pipeline or cable has been laid, SWEPI shall not be liable to damages caused by keeping the right-of-way cleared of trees, undergrowth, and other obstructions. Goes on to provide, and I'll tell you this, I like their indemnification language. Unfortunately, companies will offer agreements to people and offer you no liability protection. You can be sued. You have to defend yourself and pay for the cost of defense. And God forbid if something happens and you lose, you have to pay a judgment. So you have to have indemnification, not just the buzzword indemnification, but good, strong language. In fairness to SWEPI, I will say, we're almost here at the end. This is the one term I like. They shall indemnify and hold you harmless against all claims, suits, liabilities, expenses on injury or death to people or damage to property resulting from the exercise of the rights granted. I like that language. We want to say we're protected for anything that you do under the agreement. So I like that language. Next, tells you who you're going to pay, who's going to get paid. Next, we get into you're guaranteeing the title of your property. Won't get into that too much, but we don't do that generally. Then just goes on to state that how, like, a couple things of how this document gets signed. If you own less, they'll pay you less. Just boilerplate stuff. But the last one, kind of the landman free pass I talked about earlier. Number 10, this agreement constitutes the entire agreement between you, the landowner, and the company, and no other provisions exist beyond this written document, meaning verbal things don't matter. Everything has to be contained in this agreement. And it says that the agreement may only be modified by written amendment signed by both parties, meaning verbal statements doesn't change anything. So, okay, guys, that's the end of this agreement. That's it. So remember, we started one pipeline, gas pipeline only, buried. We want it buried 48 inches. My heavens, do we not end up there? And, well, that's the offer. That offer has to be negotiated. Number one, most likely, almost, the vast majority of cases, probably 90% of these cases, you probably have the ability to say no. Now, I'm going to back and say, hey, look, not specific advice. We got to look at your case. So the point is, many, many cases, let's put it that way, many cases, you have the ability, in the majority, I believe, clearly, and higher, much higher than that, you can say, no, thank you. This is a terrible agreement. I'm not going to do it. And what, again, is the second slap of the face, second, third, fourth, whatever it is, we're going to give you $5 or $10 to sign a terrible agreement. I mean, that's, you can't do it. We can't do it. We have to sign better agreements. And if you're going to do this, why even bother? Let me tell you a few things you didn't hear there, and they're so important. First off, there is no map showing where this pipeline has to be. And if you want to change the location, you got to come to me. There's nothing like that. We don't have that limitation. We don't have, a lot of people are concerned about, and rightfully so, reclamation, how the property is going to be reclaimed. Oh, by the way, guys, we don't know when this thing even starts. You sign this, maybe they wait 20 years to do it. The same company that's sitting on all these vertical wells doing nothing now wants you to sign a pipeline right-of-way agreement that they have no time frame in which to react or to operate. Think about that, guys. Think about that. You got to put time limits, and you need to put short time limits, not 5-year time limits. The company has shown this is what they want to do. They don't want to react. Now, gas prices go up. Maybe you'll see something change. But I personally would avoid any agreement ever that didn't have a time frame as to when operations had to occur. Oh, by the way, when does this thing end? You didn't hear anything about that. This thing can go on forever. How are they going to, again, reclaim the property? How are they going to reclaim it? There are so many issues. All of these things that can be above ground, they have to be taken care of. You have to get rid of those items. Roadways. This allows roadways to your property. Again, you can't do it. You can't do it. I could go on and on and on. Bottom line is you got to get help and stop signing bad agreements. Okay, we're up against it here, but I want to remind everybody again. Look, 2 things. Can't say it enough. Don't rely on the gas and pipeline company landmen because they work for the gas and pipeline companies, not you, the landowner. Number 2, again, we need to stop signing bad agreements. Tioga County landowners specifically, you are in a hot area that's going to become much hotter, not of production, but of development contracts. We need to raise the bar for everybody. Do not fall victim of your own frustration, which leads you to compound the frustration by signing another bad agreement, thinking that this agreement, this pipeline right-of-way agreement, that's going to be the thing that changes. That's going to be what ends up giving you royalties in the short term. Well, you better darn well have time frame limitations. You better have maps. And gosh, not specific advice for anyone, but boy, I really hope you're going to get more than $5 or $10 a foot, and not just a little bit more, a lot more. It is the number one area that I see today in Pennsylvania where people sign routinely bad agreements, and we can stop it. I represent a bunch of people out there. I have represented a bunch of people in Tioga. We have to stop this. We need to turn it around, and you know what? I'm seeing signs it is turning around. So let's keep up the good work. Stay informed. Be informed. Listen to All Things Marcellus every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on this station. And go back, check out pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com, and most importantly, have a great day and a great week.